Hi guys, we were talking about basically securing AI within your organization. And one of the things that we all agreed on is there is no magic pill to secure AI. That you really have to do a lot of the basics very well. The stuff like least privilege and zero trust, these things have to be next level. Because just assume that AI is going to get loose in your internal network. The other thing, the second point was that we talked about how do we orchestrate remediation for AI, and we talked a little bit about how combining AI with conversations to orchestrate automations can be very powerful. Use case that we talked about was device attribution, going to figure out if everybody's device is who it is assigned to who they think it is. And if it's not, reaching out to them and figuring out these problems, right? So AI can help you reach out to your workforce and help remediate problems. That conversation was driven by me for a shameless plug. The third piece that we talked about, which is really interesting, was internal threats of using AI is going to take the internal threat landscape to another layer. People using these models, once they're in your network, like, hey, I think I should have access to the HR system. Why don't I just turn Mythos on the HR system and get access? And all these people building, additionally, all these people building AI agents, they're non-technical, right? They don't understand how to build applications that are secure and the guardrails that you should be putting on them. So getting, training out to these people will be critical. The other piece of that was just like securing your agents, just like people, right? Agents can do things that you didn't intend them to, just like your people. So a lot of these same principles of securing your end users, you can apply that to AI, and that includes the AI agent should have a boss. Somebody should be accountable. So that's it.
Yeah, so thank you to my table for being very interactive and having a lot of really good conversations. I feel like there were varying levels of AI adoption at my table, varying levels or sizes of organization, and that's always really informative to see, where different organizations are. Our topic, we've talked a lot about sort of governance, we've talked about ROI for AI in this room, but our topic I think was a little bit more fundamental, which is risk management for agentic and autonomous AI systems. Because as you start to adopt anything, I think the first thing you have to evaluate is risk, right? And how are we gonna accept that risk, or how are we gonna incorporate that risk as it relates to the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve inside the org, right? So there were a few things that you said that I think were really interesting, because you guys were talking about identity and the context that an agent kind of runs in. And one of the things that we came to very quickly is that agent identity is still a real gap. Like it's a difficult thing to establish what the identity of an agent is and what context it's supposed to run in once it's inside your organization. This applies to like enterprise adopted AI agents, and also applies to sort of shadow AI that's running everywhere, right? How do you establish the identity, and how do you establish the boundaries around that identity once you've kind of figured out how you want to do that? And I think that is one of the things that we identified that's sort of holding back AI adoption for a lot of people at our table anyway, is you're not going to enable like agent collaboration until you actually understand the boundaries that you're creating around that collaboration, right? And what are the unexpected results, because those multiply exponentially as agents start to collaborate with one another. Also kind of comes down to what we heard was the way that we're typically solving identity right now is in the context of the user that's running the agent, and what is the permissions of that user. The problem being a little bit that an agent is more likely to push the boundaries of what that user can do than a user is necessarily going to do, right? A lot of times they're going to try to stay within the guardrails, where an agent is just trying to get an outcome, and it's going to press the boundaries however it needs to press the boundaries. And so that led us to the next point, which is that where we are today is human in the loop. That there is pretty much a human in the loop before an agent is taking is making a decision that's going to have an impact. But we also acknowledged that that's slowing things down, and that's the pace that the business is willing to accept right now. The human in the loop is going to change. That's probably going to become human on the loop, as we kind of talked about. And eventually what that's going to look like, and we talked, the ROI conversation is so relevant here because what we're looking at today is a lot of people, eliminating jobs because we're replacing them with AI. But when you start to get back to this pace that AI can actually enable, and you get back to human on the loop and someone has to manage all of the information and the telemetry and everything that's coming out of an AI system, now we're probably looking at more humans again to bring that back on, right? And so it's a different allocation for those humans and it's a different role for those humans, but we're probably looking at humans being back engaged in managing AI systems. And then I think the final thing that we came up with was when you're trying to think about how you manage this risk, there's an unexpected risk kind of brought along, and I think everybody in the room at this point has heard of Mythos and the headlines that Mythos made and all of the things that Mythos was able to do. And I think the only way that we kind of figured out that you control something like that happening is that you do it at the infrastructure layer. So your controls actually need to be out of reach of the AI. Like a local security agent running on the same machine where the AI agent runs probably is not going to be the best enforcement, right? So we talked about things like Firecracker, which is kind of an ephemeral VM that fires up and goes away when it's not in use anymore. And we talked about just enforcement at the data plane layer. Like how do you put the controls on the infrastructure out of reach of the AI and then use the identity of the AI to control what can actually accomplish out of its reach, right, inside the control plane or inside the data plane. So that's pretty much what we came up with. I thought it was a very insightful discussion. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll pass it on.
All right, my table was in the back there. We had a lovely conversation. Yeah, there you go, bring it on. So our topic was workforce transformation in the age of AI and automation. And we had 3 different things. So naturally, we came up with 3 bullet points, and then we naturally asked AI to come up with a concise, strategic answer. So for us, the first topic was how do we redesign roles, skills, and operating models, right? So thinking strategically as a company, right? When you're running it, AI wasn't really a big thing almost even a year ago, right? And so most of our roles and skills don't have those in our job descriptions today, right? So for us, what we came up with as a team was use a distributed AI champion model to supported by a central governance. Give teams room to experiment, but define clear guardrails for data, quality, cost, and accountability. So measure success by the business outcomes, not by which tool or person completed the work. So that was the outcome that we were looking at for number 1. Number 2 was how do you upskill leaders and teams for AI fluency? We talked about this as being a big problem because AI tools gave us an all-you-can-eat buffet, and they kind of trained our users the wrong way, right? They said just go, and a lot of skills are coming from that, and honestly traits that we actually have to reverse. For anybody that's trying to renew an AI contract, that the all-you-can-eat buffets are gone, and they're now into a usage model, which means 4x, 5x the cost if you're lucky. So for us, this was a problem for training. So how do you keep up? Every week a new thing comes out. So our takeaway was move from generic AI awareness to role-based AI fluency, right? Each role should understand how AI changes its workflows, risks, and responsibilities. Because the technology changes so quickly, training should be continuous, adaptive, and tied to role-specific expectations. Stasa actually had a very unique way of coming up with this, and that maybe you guys could implement as well, which is instead of having a team or doing something like that, actually use an AI agent to be your training and certification master, right? It can stay up to date for you and then train your workforce, and that way it's always up to date and not static and old. And the last one was how do we manage change and cultural adoption? So avoid measuring AI success through usage leaderboards alone. This goes back to the all-you-can-eat. Focus on measurable value, better outcomes, faster workflows, reduced risk, and improved customer or employee experience. So this goes back to what was talked about as well. Ownership is key, right? Every AI agent workflow or output should have a clear human owner. Yeah. So with that, thank you.
Hi all, my name is George. My table's back there. Our topic today was technology stack and agentic AI capabilities. Kind of a large area. A lot of conversations came out of that. Three questions we're trying to answer were tech stack evaluation. How are you selecting infrastructure and platforms aligned with business needs? The second question was agentic AI use. How are we defining autonomous capabilities, guardrails, and operational boundaries? And the third question was scalability and integration, which is how are you ensuring that AI solutions fit your enterprise architecture and drive measurable outcomes? So, I mean, very wide areas. What we came up with was, for the first one, the tech stack evaluation. So we said that conversation was kind of starting the wrong way, backwards, like you mentioned about asking the wrong question. So rather than asking how are we selecting infrastructure and platforms to align with business needs, we said we always come up with the business use cases first. What is it you're trying to fix before you start going out there looking for things? Whether AI is part of, the agentic AI is part of that solution is going to really depend on what the problem is you're trying to solve. So infrastructure should include AI capabilities, and they should be selected to solve a specific problem. There are some certain constraints that come with that were mentioned, things like tech debt, right? Current capabilities sometimes are incompatible with best options. If your best option includes agentic AI, and you're not able to deploy agentic AI securely, then it might be difficult to use agentic AI for this particular solution. Right? Some things, maybe your network's not able to take it. Maybe your data governance isn't quite there. So there's a lot of reasons why you may not necessarily use agentic AI, not because you don't want to use it or it's not the best way to fix it, to fix the solution, but the problem is that your current technology does not allow you to do that. So the other question, and the second question about agentic AI use and how we define autonomous capabilities, guardrails, and operational boundaries. Again, we were talking about non-human identities. Basically the same thing you were mentioning there. We have to have robust monitoring. We've become very good over the years at human identities, not very good yet at identities that are non-human. Most non-human identities we have today are service accounts.
George?
Yes.
Do you think it's important that we differentiate?
Absolutely. We have to, and for exactly the reason the gentleman here mentioned earlier, that the people the entity that's most likely to push the boundaries is not going to be the human being. It's going to be the agent. You've asked it to do a thing, it's very results oriented. If it can't get to where it needs to get to, that's when you start having those behaviors, right? Right, so then you have, just like you mentioned, humans must be responsible for reviewing and executing critical decisions. So as much as you allow your agentic AI to do a lot of the busy work, so to speak, when it comes to making decisions like something that may affect someone's account, things that are considered critical or major decisions, they have to be done by the human on the loop or human in the loop. There was also a piece in there about the guardrails and controls. And we talked about TPRM became a big topic about this because with TPRM, yes, you have contract language. The problem with these agents is that these solution providers and the agents that they use is that you have to trust that they're not going to violate the legal document you have. But it turns out it's a trust thing, and in business we're not so good at trusting. So the idea is really that the legal documentation that says do not do this with my data is really not there to stop them from doing it, because if they want to do it, they'll do it anyway. It's more to give you a cure once the damage happens. It sucks that you're saying, that's the way it goes, but really you're not going to know until after the fact, right? Or like someone else mentioned earlier, how do I know if they turn the button on their end? I don't know that they're using it or not, right? So those kind of things are part of the things you have to kind of figure a way around for your controls and for your data. And of course, with that, one of the things I mentioned earlier about the data governance, you absolutely have to know what your data is, where it is, how it is used, and what's touching it. Unfortunately, for a long time, many companies have done big bang data cleanups, right? But then just like CMDB, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, nobody's really kept up with the new things that are coming in and whatever's needs to be provisioned. And then you're bringing AI into that environment, and yeah, you're going to have breaches. You're going to have stuff that should be going out. So, all right, and then just 1 second. So the final one was about scalability and integration. The question that was being asked was, how are we ensuring that AI solutions fit enterprise architecture and drive measurable outcomes? And the consensus on the table was that the enterprise architects and all the architects in general must engage with AI SMEs. They have to understand this new environment that includes agentic AI and other forms of AI, right? To understand the capabilities and align the architectural direction, right? That still answers, because enterprise architecture is there for business direction, right? They go to the business, they get the information of here's the direction we need to go, and then they're gonna plan out how we're gonna get there. Well, they have to now include an AI SMEs as part of that process to understand what are the AI capabilities that are here, and as they're changing so fast, what can they do on the architectural side to allow that agility in your plan? Right. So that is the thing for the architecture part, and then for outcomes, again, it's kind of backwards. Outcomes must align with business use cases. So the business has decided which direction they're going. You have to get that to be the North Star of what you're trying to do. Everything else revolves around that. So regardless of what outcomes you want, if you cannot show that it ties to a company making more money, company being safer, or being more efficient, or something that the company wants, it's going to be useless. You lose the ROI portion of it. There is no ROI without the business case. So.
Thank you, George. That was great. So first of all, I want to start with, we had the most exciting topic and the best table, which is right back there. We had the best table. And we had the most exciting topic, which is AI governance and oversight, because that's what everybody wants to talk about, right? Basically, the questions were in 3 categories: define governance structure, policies and controls, oversight and risk management, which we've had a lot of conversation about amongst the few of us sitting up here, right? Kind of where our table landed, we kind of landed in 3 areas. The first one, the first key takeaway, I guess I would call, is around speed, education, and incentive and trust, right? And I've heard trust touched on more than once, right? One of the biggest risks we think that's associated with AI governance is the lack of trust, frankly, right? And the fact that we're making decisions about agents and what they're doing across the board without that trust, right? And the second area that we really talked about was blocking. Many of our companies, mine included, have put a lot of time and effort in, oh my God, we gotta block everything. We're playing whack-a-mole, if you will, across the environment to try to block things, when in reality, probably the better course is to try to educate people on what you should and shouldn't be doing with the capabilities that are out there today, right? And to me, the incentive around whether or not you should tell people what they can and can't do with AI capability makes a big difference. Finally, the last one, or the last category, I guess I would say, is accountability. And we had some discussion about this. Actually, I brought up, and I'll say this, and I'll let you guys throw tomatoes at me or whatever, right? But this week, right, the Pope, and I'm not Catholic, so let me just start with that. The Pope literally came out with what's called an encyclical, right? And what it is basically is a multiple page, multiple paragraph thing to influence 1.5 billion people on the planet, which by my calculations about 20% of the planet, on the fact that AI is not a person, right? Or doesn't have personhood. And so we had a little bit of a discussion at our table about how long is that going to last. And more than once this got brought up because it goes to accountability, right? At the end of the day, we've now got agents building code. And pretty soon the agents are going to build agents that build agents that build code. And there is no way, in my opinion, There's no way you're gonna tie human back to that. It's not possible, right? And so the question is then, from a governance perspective, who's accountable, right? Who's accountable? And I even mentioned, that corporations, if you think about that, corporation today is considered an entity, right? It's not a person, but it is an entity. It has assets, it has money, it can be sued by the lawyers, which there's some talk about 6 lawyers in the room, right? That's the way I think about that. So I think that's one big thing that
Yeah,
has
but
to
James, that's not even common sense.
that-
Yeah. So, are you a magic maker and you could come up with the
Nope.
answer?
I
Why not?
I can, but I do think, the fact, part of what was interesting to me, Robin, is literally the Pope, and again, I'm not Catholic, so I'm not pushing anything. I'm just saying, even now, the person that's in charge of the largest contingent of people, 1.5 billion people, is saying clearly saying in a document, AI is never gonna have personhood, we shouldn't confuse it, right? Now, I don't know whether that's where we're gonna land or not. I just bring it up as.
But that doesn't mean that he knows who's gonna be accountable.
No, he doesn't, right? And to me, it just says we all should be thinking about that from an oversight perspective, right? And you know what this reminds me, Robin? I'll tell a quick story if I have time. Do we have time? Sure. Quick story my grandfather told me years ago, right? I don't know if I can do this sitting in a chair, right? Do you guys know the duck and the lawyer? Do you know the duck and the lawyer story? Do you know the story? Anybody know the story? It's a great story, right? So I gotta stand up. I can't do this sitting down. I'm sorry, George. I gotta stand up. So there's this big city lawyer from downtown Dallas, since we're all from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and there's this farmer, right, from up in Anna. For those of you who know where Anna, Texas is. This big city lawyer is out duck hunting, and he shoots it, he goes boom, he shoots a duck over there. It falls on the other side of a barbed wire fence. And so he heads over there with his buddy, someone go get my duck, and he starts to crawl over the barbed wire fence, and this old farmer pulls up on a John Deere tractor, and he's got a piece of straw hanging out of his mouth. He says, "Boy, where do you think you're going?" Right? And he said, "Well, sir, I shot a duck and it landed right there. I'm just gonna go over and pick up my duck." And the old farmer says, "Well, I don't think you understand. This is my property on this side of the fence. You can't just come over here and pick up this duck. This is my duck." And the lawyer's like, "I'll tell you what, you old man," this is an old farmer, "I'll sue your ass and I'll own this property before in the next week if you don't let me come over and get the duck." The old farmer says, "What? Clearly, you don't understand how we resolve things here in Anna, Texas." So let me tell you how we do it. We have what we call a 3-kick rule. I get to kick you 3 times, you get to kick me 3 times, and we just keep doing this till somebody gives up. And whoever gives up, the other person gets a duck. And the old lawyer's grinning, and he's thinking, "I'd like nothing more than to beat the shit out of this old guy, All right, old man, come on over here. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna show you who's really king around here." So the old farmer gets down off the John Deere tractor, he takes the straw out of his mouth, comes over, boom, kicks that lawyer right in the stomach. And he's just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just kicked me in the stomach, you bastard old guy." Then he turns around and he pulls off and trips him, kicks his feet out from under, he falls right into a fresh cow patty. And now at this point, the lawyer's pissed. He's like, this old man has no idea what's coming for him. And then finally he comes over and he punches him right in the kidney, At this point the lawyer's going, "Okay, old man, I'm telling you, you just don't know what you're in for." The old lawyer sits back, the old man sits back against the tractor, puts the straw back in his mouth and says, "Nah, I give up. You can have the duck." And kind of the reason I tell the story is, I really think it is about, kind of looking around the corner and thinking about what's coming at us. And I do think this whole concept of personhood or who's doing what and the trust associated with AI is one of the biggest things we have to deal with. So I'll leave you with that, bro.
Completely agree.